Well, Rob, thank you very much for inviting us in, and it's good to be able to talk with Computacenter, because I know you're doing quite a few of these interviews. If I look at your career, the word solutions goes right through it, which I think is important, because as a CIO of a user organization or user organizations myself, that's the bit I think that's often lost, is the solutions bit, the business solutions. You know, the technology's there to create the systems, to manage the information and the business processes. So it's the solutions that really count.
No. I think that's a interesting comment. I mean, I've always been interested in technology. I think that's the first thing to say. But it's the application of that technology to deliver the solutions that I think really interests me and my teams, and actually Computacenter more widely. So yes, I'm a technologist at heart. I joined Computacenter about 20 years ago and did various consulting roles and sales roles, and then eventually a mobile business when the mobile service providers were starting to deliver data, and that was the first time we really got truly mobile solutions that we were able to take to market. I guess 2002, 2003 now, but yes, so a theme throughout my career, I think.
And that's interesting going into mobile, because actually if you look at, I suppose, the digital revolution at the moment, and what's really making that happen, or at least I think the rapid expansion in consumerization, that's really around mobile, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was a step change in IT. If I look back, I mean, firstly, I think I can't remember a time when IT wasn't digital. By the way, I'm not quite sure. I don't ever remember it. The analog age of technology, but no, it's a phrase that we use now. And I think for me, actually, it's the rate of change now. Consumerization. You're absolutely right. That's a key trend. But it's the rate of change of that technology. And if I look back, we talked about the mobile piece, and how the mobile solutions and how quickly increasing bandwidth and pervasive connectivity is probably a better way of saying it, made the change for people to consume more information. And then it's our job to be able to deliver that information in an intuitive way to users. And that at the crux of it is what we try to do with IT solutions. We try and deliver more information in a more consumable form and easy for people to consume.
And that word information is the key, isn't it? Information.
It's the future of data. It's the future of our industry.
I don't know if you'd seen that study by Capgemini and Sloan School, MIT, but they came up with a few questions about digital. And one or two of the first couple of questions, or I suppose comments, were around, is digital only about the consumer? Is it only about the customer and the relationship with the customer?
The way I like to look at it, and let's take digital transformation, which is a fairly common phrase at the moment. We see that really in three key areas. What is digital transformation to us? One is powering experiences. So how is it that we can help our customers, Computacenter customers, better service their customers? And that is about IT solutions that give more insight, deliver a better customer experience to their customers. And that then helps them disrupt rather than be disrupted, and it helps them differentiate. You then look at the other areas. It's about inspiring employees, and this is where we talk about maybe the digital workplace and workplace transformation. Yeah, how do we get that intuitive access to information? How do we give them, how do we empower them with tools to collaborate? All of that piece of engaging the end user and giving them a better experience with IT solutions. And then the third one, which has always been there, is doing more for less, so driving efficiencies. So this is about automation. If we look at the infrastructure, IT infrastructure business, it's rapidly commoditizing. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about private cloud, public cloud, SaaS services, but all of that automation, that layer of IT where we're driving it to more of a commodity sale. This is why information is the future of our industry, because we have to get up that stack and actually look at where we're delivering the value, not keeping the lights on.
Absolutely. Another couple of comments were around the fact that there is a belief out there that you should let individuals drive the digital initiatives within organizations. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. What's your feeling on that?
That's the DevOps, the DevOps approach. Yes, I mean, and it's definitely something that we're seeing, this very rapid development of solutions. And I'm not talking that necessarily in an IT perspective, but that rapid, that creativity, that's how do we disrupt before we're disrupted? How do we go and do something different? What are our competitors doing? You know, what information we get? I mean, end user analytics is a very interesting area for me, especially when we're looking at workplace, because we now have a level of insight into the infrastructures that we run. We're about 4.5 million users that we currently support. And with something like end user analytics, we can get real-time data on what's going wrong where. And that's not just a one-off thing to solve existing problems in the environment. That's equally applicable to a project and program scenario where you're rolling out something new. And increasingly, with software as a service, with all of the main software vendors moving to software as a service, they are in control now of the software the users are consuming. So we as an infrastructure provider lose control to some extent of the service we provide because we're on the receiving end. So having that real-time information coming back in that end user analytics scenario to us means that we can react much more quickly and proactively to changes the vendors are making to the environment, making sure our customers are not impacted.
I suppose this is a good time to ask this question, which was, you're very much into looking at the development of solutions for your customers. Yeah. So you have to anticipate what's happening out there. Yeah. What's the process of doing that? Because you're on the supply side, looking at what the customers will be doing or will need to do in the future.
It is, and it's probably a good time to say, you know, we are very much an infrastructure company. We help CIOs put in infrastructure.
So this is the digital gateway.
Digital gateway, digital workplace are our two areas. Yes, our user proposition and our enterprise proposition. But we help CIOs make that digital transformation, end user and in the core, to enable them to shift to digital. And you know, that's whilst we are looking at solutions across that infrastructure. The most difficult thing for us is a timing thing. You know, whether that's cloud or we've talked about analytics, big data. We have some new technologies in workplace that are new solutions in workplace that are, you know, from a Microsoft perspective, Windows 10, Office 365, but it's a lot wider than that. There's a very rich ecosystem of vendors where it's desktop as a service offerings, and then so you've got a whole number of solutions to a whole number of moving parts to try and place on the appropriate timeline. And for us, the most important thing is timing. So we're very customer driven. So when we see pipeline start to build, and we do listen to our vendors and all their great new solutions, but ultimately it's us taking the decisions about when to invest in something, and it's driven by the customer's need and the demand.
Because it's a very noisy supplier marketplace, isn't it?
There's a very noisy partner ecosystem market. There's a number of things that make it difficult to do, and I think harder than ever before because of the rate of change in the market. You know, I sometimes think when I said, you know, we're technologist at heart, but I think millennials coming into this company, coming into the IT market now, it's a very interesting time because of the rate of change. So I say to them, you know, in 2 years you can be as much of an expert as anyone else in this arena because of the rate of change. That's the good news. The bad news is there's someone coming up behind you that's probably going to be an expert in 6 months, given how fast it will move on.
And the other thing is you've got to provide that solid infrastructure, don't you? Yeah. That infrastructure's got to be solid underneath the turbulence that's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can't, the infrastructure, you know, it's not always the most heralded thing. You know, everyone's after the latest solution that will, you know, that will disrupt at a business level. But if you can't deliver it to your users in a robust, secure manner, then you can have the best applications, line of business applications in the world, but you're not going to reap the advantage from them. And that's where we come in. That's what we do. We deliver that robust, secure infrastructure that enables the business solutions that run across the top of that to be fully leveraged.
And really, to power this exponential expansion, it's cloud must be a big enabler in that.
Yes. What's cloud? Cloud's a bit like digital for me. You know, digital is everything. Cloud is everything. Perhaps if I can just qualify the way that I see it, you know, you have your private cloud, private and on-premise, and then your public cloud that's again delivered from our hyperscale.
And somewhere between the two is the hybrid.
And somewhere between the two is the hybrid. And in fact, that's the key discussion that we have with CIOs on where on that continuum from private to public are you. We talked about DevOps earlier. You know, DevOps is a great way of firing up infrastructure very quickly to try things, rapid development. But actually, once you've, and then fail fast. But once you've made your decisions about where you're going to invest your dollars to your pounds, as we are over here, to make that difference, you know, are you then going to bring it back into production? Have you got the right, you know, is there legislative issues? Are there regulatory issues? So whilst, you know, public cloud has absolutely the delivers you a set of functionality to enable that rapid, agile DevOps environment. Actually, when you then run it in production, is it
expensive?
It's expensive, and that's what it comes to. And then there's a cost issue as well.
Yeah.
Is the spend going out of control?
Yeah, and I don't think some people really understand what the economics are necessarily when they go into things like
no, and the competitive landscape there is, you know, there's multiple vendors in private, there's multiple vendors in public, and they're all competing to run those line of business applications. At the end of the day, it's all about the applications. They're competing to run the applications in the most effective, and cost-effective way possible.
And I mean, looking at that cloud market, do you think there's going to be a shakeout? I mean, you've got a range of small niche suppliers at the moment, then you've got the big chaps. Like
It's a good question. I think there's a couple of different markets. Again, you can't address it as whole as cloud. Infrastructure as a service, you've got the hyperscale partners. You know, probably you're talking about Microsoft Azure, you're talking about AWS, and you're talking about Google. I think you know, they are the hyperscale partners, and whilst we will have new entrants, I think that one's pretty much set. If you look at things at the other end of the spectrum, software as a service, it's a great market to be in. If you've got you know, niche products that are making a real difference to business, you can quickly get to market. As we said, it's all about the apps and the software as a service portfolios, where we're also really helping I think our customers by, we are seeing which software as a service vendors are getting hot quickly, if you like. You know, where are people gaining competitive advantage from deploying that, whether that's cybersecurity or whether that's analytics or
are those the hot areas?
Probably Internet of Things would probably be the other. There's some fascinating use cases from Internet of Things.
But of course, cloud as an a CIO myself, the one big concern we always have or had was around security.
Yep.
And that's a big subject, and certainly growing in board significance at the moment. What's your view on security and the cloud? And
yeah, I mean, security has always been of paramount importance. I think there's a couple of topical events. WannaCry recently brought that home to a lot of.
But that was basic stuff, wasn't it? WannaCry. I mean, it was basic patching and.
So with WannaCry, in particular, they targeted vulnerable sectors which they knew had nodes that were
whether because of technical reasons or otherwise. Yeah,
absolutely. And but I think, you know, this is why things like GDPR are important to me, because
I was going to pick up on GDPR.
Yeah, good. Speak to it. Because there's two reasons that's important for me. One is it brings home the need to manage your data properly. and you know, actually,
I think it's a great opportunity actually, because the number of organizations I go into where you've got proper data governance is very limited.
absolutely. And given earlier in the conversation, we were talking about the importance of information, both to differentiate yourself if you understand your customers better and their needs, but also to analyze and act on that information. Proper, say, data governance, data management is paramount. The second thing then with GDPR is how you secure that data. And I think you know, the level of fines, and we've yet to see whether it would be a compelling event and whether
4% and the 20 million euros. Yeah.
Well, I think 4%, isn't it, for breach?
For a major breach, yeah.
And then 2% for not declaring with 72 hours. Within 72 hours. So there's a time frame element to this as well.
How many organizations do you know could do that in 72 hours?
I can't comment. What I will say on that is I think there's if organizations have been following the governance that's been laid down in previous legislation,
and the DPA,
they're probably 80% of the way there.
But there's so many organizations who haven't, because it's been fairly lenient, hasn't it, the DPA?
And this is where we will see at the beginning of next year, we're engaged in a lot of activity to help people be compliant. You know, it's our aim to get 100% of our customers compliant, because I think that does set you up then to really leverage the innovative business applications that are coming down the line, because if you know what information you've got, you know where it is, you know how you've secured it, you're in a far better position to leverage it.
And I think it's going to make people a lot more aware of their customers, the citizens, the clients, and the fact that, in fact, that seems to me to be a really major area of development at the moment. It's around the one single view of either the customer or the citizen.
And I think that brings us back to Internet of Things to a certain amount. You know, there is more information now than we've ever had. That's, you know, exponentially building, and I think, you know, how you collect that in, how you analyze that, how you marry different data sets together to give you proactive, the ability to be proactive with your customers is the key to differentiating as a business. And we've seen from, you know, you can look at examples such as Uber, you know, where, you know, they've you know, there's a very disruptive business model come through. There's a number of examples of that where you know, you can see mature industries
being disrupted. Yeah.
Oh,
I suppose one of the things in that Sloan Cap study was around the fact that digitization is different in different industries.
Yep.
Or there's a question about that. I think it's different rates, but is it really different?
I think there's a concept of information intensity that is referenced in there, which is, you know, if you look at the financial sector, you know, it's all noughts and ones. You know, there's nothing material there. Whereas if you look at the manufacturing segment or sector, you've got something tangible that you're actually making. So, you know, I think there is that level of information intensity probably gives you an indicator of how easily disrupted by new solutions you can be, but the reality is it will happen to everyone. But I think people in the finance sector, you know, we know about things like Bitcoin and the blockchain, you know, technology or solutions that underpin that. They're actually equally relevant in a distributed ledger is equally relevant in a number of sectors. But the fintech, I think, is a great example of a very information-intensive industry which is undergoing huge disruption. A great example, I think, is the bank Monzo. Retail bank got its retail banking license a couple of months ago now, completely built in public cloud.
Amazing.
No legacy infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that you know, if you think about that compared to our established traditional retail high street banks, you know, their entire focus is on how do we improve the customer experience. They don't have any keeping the lights on.
Yeah, and so how do the classic banks compete? That's a big issue.
It is. and one they all know have a far better answer for.
And some of them have very old systems.
Yes.
You know, and a legacy in there that's going to be difficult to overcome.
Yep.
Looking at the security, I mean, the whole security picture, I think, has changed, hasn't it? Because the one where you had the defensive wall around you, that's gone.
Yeah.
So,
well, it hasn't gone. I would hope for the majority of our customers and UK organisations. But no, I take your point. It's as much as threat detection. It's as much about threat detection, but it's also prevention now. So what is your process? What's your governance for when these breaches occur? And that's again implicit in GDPR. What's then your communication plan if that information on your customers, on individuals, has been compromised? You know, you have to have a plan to remediate and to communicate, and that's all part of the GDPR legislation. And just having people going through the requirements to comply, I think will bring a much needed discipline to all UK organisations, and that will ultimately collectively put us in a better place, given the global threat that we're seeing now.
So how do we counter that threat? Because it's changing. The actors are changing.
Yeah.
The vectors are changing.
It is, and probably, you know, we run a series of events with CIOs and get a lot of feedback, and it reminds me of the discussion we had at the last CIO round table, where, you know, the feedback on the partners in the cybersecurity partners was so fast moving. There were so many different disciplines and components of the puzzle that they had to plug together, and they're all standalone. There's no integrated end-to-end security.
Of security, yeah, that's the impression I'm getting.
So it's best of breed tools, but then, you know, you've got something as basic as, you know, user manipulation and phishing techniques that can render the most advanced best of breed tools that have been properly integrated redundant, because someone is not educated on the impact of and the responsibility they have to the security posture. That was can compromise it.
It's quite interesting. The interview we had with the CISO from Cisco was that he actually sends out phishing attacks to his users to find out who's going to actually log on to those.
You know, at the end of the day, it's all part of a thorough penetration testing process. I'm interested the CISO's doing it himself, but you know.
Well, he does it apparently, and he'll find out who's been naughty, pull them in, and give them a bit of instruction, and then send it out again a month later, see if they've learned the lesson or not. Because actually, when you look at it, security is still one of the most, I suppose, sensitive and the weakest link in the chain is still people.
Yeah. So I view Internet of Things as the evolution of our marketplace. As we connect more and more endpoints, they have to be secured, they have to be connected, that data has to be stored, and they have to be analysed. And, you know, the ability to do that, if you think about that, that's the equivalent of a current traditional infrastructure as we would think about it in terms of networking, security, data center, and then the workplace or the users accessing and making use of that information.
Are you finding that when people are rolling out this Internet of Things, that the security is perhaps not all that it might be?
I think with anything new, you have a lot to learn about how you secure it, and you don't know sometimes what you don't know. But I think the Internet of Things solutions that we are now seeing, and the fascinating use cases that are able to drive disruption for organisations, the security will be inherent within those, and it's just a case of, again, putting together the appropriate security wrap for that solution, as we would do for, if you like, a more traditional solution.
Which is okay in the corporate environment, isn't it? But what happens when these things like, I mean, everybody uses the the fridge and and these home articles and so on, and cars. But there is the potential, I think, for these things not to be properly secured and for to act really as vectors and services for attack. And
absolutely.
And the attackers have changed, haven't they? I mean, the nature has changed. Why ransomware? Because it's very cheap, very accessible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, and you have the country threats now that we see, and you know, if we I guess lift it up a level, the more computing power we have on the planet, which, as we know, is in an exponential curve, which is really starting to now impact. Then the more capacity you have that can be used for the wrong reasons.
To attack.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So identity management. That's going to be an important one as we look at a more flexible, more mobile, etc. workforce.
Yes. I mean, this is at the centre of our digital me proposition, so our workplace transformation. So when we talk about empowering employees, what we mean by that is that the identity defines what they need, when they need it, how they access it, and at that point you can then understand, from a user profile, you can understand how best to service them with the right applications, the right, the pervasive connectivity, and in the right workspace. So physically, what do they need? You know, where they might be working.
And does that digital me mean that, you know, the old adage of I've got much better computing at home, my games on my PC is much better than what I get at work? Is that going to change, do you think?
Well, again, this is an interesting way where the consumerization versus the requirement for security.
The BYOD sort of thing.
Yes, and you know, the requirement for security, I think, should not get in the way of an intuitive experience. But equally, you have to secure. Again, your information and your systems, and protect your IP to the right level. So, as with all these things, there's a balance with, with security on one end and flexibility and ease of use on the other end. And I think it's different, given the applications and use cases you're looking at. But the key thing to do is to find the right balance there.
So how does the role of the CIO change in that, do you think?
I think it's as hard as it's ever been with the CIO. We've always had to do more for less and keep the lights on, but now we've got this rapidly accelerating set of technologies, applications, innovative use cases that they've got to try and figure out which ones that they can help drive the business with, as well as leveraging new technologies to take cost out, new solutions to take cost out with the other side. And the chief execs are now dependent on that function within the business to have a reliable infrastructure, but to have a value-adding set of applications that run across the top.
For someone coming in as a career into either the supply side or the demand side of IT or digital, what would be your advice to youngsters coming in? Is it a good place to come?
IT today, you're coming in fundamentally at a business level, because the impact you can make today with the level at which applications can impact the way a business operates, you're not actually talking about IT. You're not talking about storage and processing and how you move.
You've got to understand that, I think, but and understand the impact.
You've got to understand it, but that's the piece that's commoditizing away.
Yeah.
The data scientists, the creative use cases for Internet of Things, that is where the future of IT is. And I know I tell my kids, you know, I'm lucky to be in the job I am because, you know, you see these amazing things happening with technology on a daily basis. But, you know, I think the key thing for me is that to be an expert in IT, you need to be an expert in business. Now, whether that's sector specific or in a particular solution area, that's up to the individual.
So it's using the IT, that's the important.
It's applying technology for the good of,
of
the business.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Rob. That was
Thanks,
extremely
Bill.
interesting, and it's a bright new future.
Indeed. Thank
Thanks.
you.